They say power is a game you either play or you lose. I learned that the hard way. My name is Bella Sterling, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you I was a woman in love, living a quiet life, oblivious to the forces waiting to tear me apart. But life has a funny way of showing you who you really are when everything you thought was secure is ripped from under your feet. I wasn't born with ambition. I wasn't born to lead. I was born into a life of privilege, and for a time that was enough. But when the man I trusted most walked away from me in the ICU, when he discarded me like I was nothing more than a burden, that's when I learned the truth about power. You see, the world doesn't care about your feelings, your dreams, or your loyalty. It cares about what you can give, what you can offer in return. And if you don't have anything left to offer, it will take everything from you and leave you broken. But here's the thing no one tells you: when you're broken, you have two choices. You either stay down or you rise. I rose, and when I rose, I took everything I had lost and built an empire from the rubble of my past. And now I run the game. But make no mistake, it wasn't the money or the title that changed me. It was the lesson I learned along the way. The greatest power you can ever have is the power to never be broken again. This is the story of how I transformed my pain into the force that controls the world. This is the story of how I learned to never let anyone or anything take that power from me again. You're about to hear a story that wasn't meant to be told, a story about betrayal, greed, and a life-changing revelation that will alter the way you see the world. This isn't just a tale of heartbreak, it's a dark journey into the hidden forces at play in your life. Forces you've been blind to, forces that control you and everyone around you. The clock ticks as you sit there, questioning everything you've been told, everything you've been taught. But let me ask you this. What if your greatest adversary wasn't a stranger, but the person closest to you, someone you loved, someone you trusted, someone who could rip apart everything you've worked for in an instant? Sounds impossible, right? Well, let me tell you about Bella Sterling. Bella, a woman who had everything: a steady job, a cozy home, a life that seemed perfect from the outside. But she was about to learn the truth. There's no such thing as perfect. Not in this world. Not when the very people you trust the most can destroy you in a single move. This is the beginning of her story, a story you'll wish you never heard. But now that you have, there's no turning back. What you learn today will change how you view everything from now on. Her name is Bella Sterling. At 26, she had everything: a thriving career, a loving husband named Ryan, and a life that appeared to be everything she ever wanted. But behind the facade, something darker was stirring. She was the heir to a vast fortune, money, power, a legacy that stretched back for generations, but she kept it hidden from Ryan. She wanted him to love her for who she was, not for the wealth she stood to inherit. She believed in love. She believed in trust. But she was about to learn that those things meant nothing when the system has already decided who you are and what you're worth. And in this system, love and loyalty are nothing more than tools for manipulation. Everything changed in an instant: a car accident, a flash of memory, shattering glass, twisted metal, then nothing. When Bella opened her eyes, she found herself in an ICU bed. Her body, once strong and full of life, now felt like a prison. Her legs paralyzed, her future shattered, and that's when Ryan walked in. But he wasn't the man she remembered. He didn't rush to her side. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't even offer a comforting word. Instead, he brought with him a stranger dressed in black, holding an envelope, a D. Ivor's noticed as Bella lay there, vulnerable and broken. Her husband, the man she had trusted more than anyone, made a cold, calculated decision. He wasn't there to comfort her. He wasn't there to help her through the hardest time of her life. No, Ryan was there to end it all, to sever their bond when she needed him the most. I filed this morning, Ryan said, as casually as if he were placing an order at a restaurant. Divorce papers, served to her in the ICU. No emotions, no remorse, just a business transaction. Bella's heart sank as the truth settled in. Ryan, the man who promised to stand by her in sickness and in health, had just signed the death certificate for their marriage, and as he stood there, looking down at her with indifference, Bella realized something. She wasn't the only one who had been played. Ryan had been played too, but by something much bigger than him. He didn't know it yet, but he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The divorce papers, which he thought were his escape from the burden of caring for her, would soon become his undoing. And Bella? She had no idea that the real fight was just beginning. The divorce papers were signed. Ryan walked out, leaving Bella alone in the sterile white room, suffocating under the weight of her new reality. But as the door clicked shut behind him, something in Bella shifted. She had always been a pawn in someone else's game. Her father, the powerful real estate mogul, had raised her to be strong, to be independent, to fight for what was hers. But she had never seen the full picture, never realized the extent to which the world had been manipulating her, using her, until that very moment. In the silence of the ICU, Bella felt a cold, numbing wave wash over her. She had been betrayed, but more than that, she had been exposed to the truth, the dark, ugly truth of how power works in this world. It's not about love, it's not about loyalty, it's about control. And in that moment, Bella made a decision. She would not let herself be crushed by the weight of betrayal. She would rise, not just for herself, but for everything she stood to lose. The life she thought she had was gone, but the life she was about to build would be something more powerful than she could ever imagine. But Bella wasn't alone, not entirely. In the midst of her despair, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. Her father, Robert Sterling, the titan of the real estate world. He had never approved of Ryan. He had warned her from the beginning that Ryan was nothing more than a gold digger in a suit. Bella had ignored him, blinded by love, but now, in her broken state, she saw the truth. Robert Sterling didn't lecture her. He didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, he reached out, taking her hand with a firm but gentle grip. "Don't cry over trash," he told her, his voice steady. "Pack your things. We're going home." And just like that, everything Bella had known, the world she had built with Ryan, the life she thought she would have, crumbled away. But in its place, something stronger began to take shape. Her father, despite his own struggles, was there for her. He was the one who had always been there, even when she refused to see it. But as Bella would soon learn, her father's presence was both a blessing and a curse. Robert was dying. He had only months to live, and the weight of his illness hung heavy in the air. But before he passed, he had something important to share with Bella, a truth that would change everything. Robert's confession came quietly one night as Bella sat in her wheelchair, struggling to regain her strength. The rehab wing was silent save for the rhythmic beeping of machines and the soft murmur of nurses in the hall. It was in this quiet, desolate space that Robert sat down across from her, his frail body weak from the cancer that ravaged him. "Bella," he said, his voice steady but laced with pain, "there are two things I need to tell you, one bad and one good." Key bad news came first. Robert had been diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. The doctors had given him only a few months to live. Bella's heart broke as she heard the words, but she knew it wasn't just the cancer that was tearing him apart. It was the knowledge that he had no control over the one thing that mattered most, his legacy. But the good news? That came in the form of an inheritance, one that would change everything for Bella. Robert revealed that he had updated his will, ensuring that everything he owned, everything he had worked for, would pass to her. But there was a catch. In this state, inheritance could be considered marital property if Bella were still married to Ryan. Robert explained that if Bella and Ryan's divorce wasn't finalized before his death, Ryan could claim half of everything. But if the divorce was finalized before Robert passed, then the entire estate worth millions would be Bella's. As Bella sat there in her wheelchair, the weight of her father's words sank deep into her bones. Ryan's rush to end their marriage had been a fatal mistake. He hadn't just cut ties with her, he had unwittingly severed his claim to the fortune that was now hers. Bella had always been naive when it came to love, but now, with the clarity of truth, she understood exactly what had happened. Ryan had abandoned her in the ICU, thinking he was freeing himself from a burden. What he didn't know was that his impatience, his desire to leave her behind, had just cost him everything. The house, the car, the money, none of it would ever be his. He had thrown it all away for a few $1,000s and a false sense of freedom. Bella wiped the tears from her face, but there was no sadness left. Instead, a cold fire began to burn inside her. She wasn't just going to survive this, she was going to thrive. Her father's words had planted the seed, but it was up to her to grow it into something far more powerful than Ryan or anyone could ever imagine. The path ahead wasn't easy. The emotional scars from her accident, from the betrayal, were still fresh. But Bella wasn't the same woman she was before. She was stronger, more focused, more dangerous than she had ever been. She was about to step into her true power, and there was no turning back. Time passed. Months of grueling rehab and tireless physical therapy began to transform Bella in ways she couldn't have predicted. Each painful step, each muscle that screamed in agony, was a reminder of everything she had lost and everything she had yet to gain. She was determined to rise above the broken woman she had been and become something entirely different. Her father's passing was a quiet, private affair. There were no grand ceremonies, no emotional speeches. He had prepared everything meticulously. The estate was hers, the business was hers, and the power that came with it was now in her hands. Bella knew this wasn't just about the money or the legacy. It was about control, the control she had always lacked, the control she had been denied by Ryan, by the system, by the very forces that had conspired to break her. But now she was in the driver's seat. Her inheritance was not just wealth, it was a weapon. The moment she could walk again, no matter how shaky those first steps were, she would take what was rightfully hers, and she would use it to destroy the man who had betrayed her. Every day, Bella poured herself into her recovery, but it wasn't just physical strength she was building, it was mental toughness, an unshakable will to overcome any obstacle. no matter how insurmountable it seemed. 6 months later, the moment Bella had been waiting for arrived. It wasn't just about standing again, it was about more than that. As she braced herself against the chair, feeling the cold hardwood beneath her hands, she summoned every ounce of her willpower. The pain in her legs, the uncertainty in her mind, it all faded away as she stood up. It wasn't graceful, it wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Enough to prove to herself and to everyone watching that she wasn't broken. She was reborn. Her father, now frail and barely able to speak, watched her from his wheelchair. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, were now clouded by the ravages of illness. But in that moment, they glistened with pride. Bella had done it. She had risen from the ashes of her own destruction and become the woman she had always been meant to be. Bella's victory was bittersweet. Her father died soon after, peacefully, knowing that he had passed on his legacy to the only person he trusted with it. Bella had faced her greatest trial, and she had emerged victorious. But the real battle was just beginning. Bella didn't just inherit her father's fortune, she inherited his world. Sterling Industries. The multi-million-dollar empire that had once been her family's legacy was now hers to command. And command it she did, while Ryan squandered his life away, spending the money he had stolen from her on parties, vacations, and a new, younger girlfriend. Bella was building something far more powerful. She had already started the process of transforming Sterling Industries into a juggernaut. No longer the timid, love-stricken woman she once was, Bella was now a force to be reckoned with. She hired the best lawyers, the most ruthless investors, and the most brilliant minds in the business world. She knew exactly how to use the power of money and influence to crush anyone who dared to stand in her way. And there were many who tried, rivals who thought they could take advantage of her, competitors who underestimated her, and of course, Ryan. But Bella wasn't interested in petty corporate battles. She was focused on something far greater. She was building a legacy that would outlast everyone, and anyone who tried to take what was hers would learn the hard way that they were no match for her. The day the article came out, Bella's world changed once again. Forbes ran a feature on her, calling her the real estate queen. The article didn't just talk about her success. It told the world that she had taken control of her father's empire and turned it into something even more powerful. Her empire was now worth over $20 million, and she was just getting started. Ryan saw it. He saw the magazine cover with Bella standing in a glass high-rise office looking down at the city she now owned. The reality hit him like a ton of bricks. The woman he had abandoned, the woman he had discarded in the ICU, had become a force to be reckoned with, and he had no idea how to get back into her life. But Ryan wasn't a fool. He knew exactly what he had lost, and that's when he made his move. It started with a phone call. Ryan, sounding desperate, reached out to Bella. "I saw the article," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I'm so happy for you, Bella. Can we meet up?" Bella didn't respond at first. She didn't have to. She already knew what Ryan wanted. He didn't miss her. He missed the money. He missed the power. He missed the life he thought he could have, the life he had squandered. But Bella wasn't interested in reconciling. She wasn't interested in revisiting the past. She had moved on. And if Ryan thought he could worm his way back into her life, he had another thing coming. 2 days later, Ryan sent flowers to her office. The next day, he waited for her in the lobby. He was there, looking disheveled, desperate, trying to act like the man he once was. But Bella knew better. When she finally saw him face to face, she wasn't moved. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even surprised. She was cold, detached. He didn't matter anymore. Ryan tried to hug her, but Bella's security stepped in, blocking him. "What do you want, Ryan?" she asked, her voice calm but deadly. He stammered, his words shaky. "I left because I loved you. I was trying to help you grow. I didn't want you to rely on me. It was all a test." Bella laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was a laugh of someone who had finally seen through the illusion. "You abandoned me. You took everything. You're a liar, Ryan, and you'll never get back into my life." Her voice dropped, becoming a whisper. "You're just another man who thought he could use me. Well, you played your hand. Now deal with the consequences." And with that, she turned her back on him. Ryan had been part of her past, but he would never be part of her future. The lawsuit came soon after. Ryan, desperate and panicked, filed a civil suit against Bella, demanding half of the inheritance he believed was rightfully his. He claimed that her father had promised him shares in the company before their divorce. But Bella wasn't scared. She had prepared for this moment. Her father had made sure she was ready for anything Ryan, or anyone, would throw at her. And when the court date came, Bella walked in, not as a broken woman, but as a powerhouse in her own right. Ryan's case was weak from the start. He was desperate. He thought he could use the system to manipulate Bella into paying him what he thought he was owed. But the truth was, he had already lost. And when the court heard the truth that Ryan had abandoned Bella when she was at her most vulnerable, it was over for him. Bella sat calmly as the court proceedings unfolded. Ryan's attorney, a man named Miller, tried his best to spin the story, painting Ryan as the victim of a cruel, heartless wife. But every word he spoke only dug Ryan deeper into the hole he had already created. And then Bella's lawyer, Harrison, stood up. Harrison wasn't just a lawyer, he was a shark, a cold, calculating strategist who knew exactly how to win. And that's exactly what he did. He presented the evidence. The security footage from the ICU, where Ryan had made it clear that he didn't want to be a caregiver. He had no desire to care for his wife in her time of need. The video played in the courtroom, and Ryan's face drained of color as the truth was exposed for all to see. Bella's attorney didn't need to say another word. The truth spoke for itself, and then came the final blow. Incredible rise. She had taken over the reins of Sterling Industries and turned it into a powerhouse. But it wasn't just about the money, it was about control. It was about showing the world that she wasn't just another naive woman in the shadows of a rich, powerful family. She was now the one pulling the strings, and everyone in her path would feel her grip. Her rise wasn't just a triumph over the men who had betrayed her, it was a message to every single person who ever thought they could walk all over her, take what was hers, and leave her broken. She wasn't just going to succeed, she was going to dominate, and in this world, there were only two types of people, those who were in control and those who were controlled. Bella had made her choice as she walked into her new office, a sleek, modern space that symbolized her new life. She glanced out over the city. It was hers now, in a way Ryan would never understand. He had walked away from it all, but Bella had built something even more powerful in its place, and she would never stop building. As the months passed, Bella's influence only grew. Her strategic mind, her ability to make ruthless decisions, and her unyielding drive propelled her to the top of the business world. She started to make waves, not just within the real estate industry, but in every corner of the financial world. People were watching her, and they didn't know what to make of her. Was she a savior or was she a destroyer? No one really knew. But what they did know was this: Bella Sterling was a name to be reckoned with. She wasn't the same woman who had once cried over a man who had abandoned her. She had become something far more dangerous. It wasn't long before the whispers started. People began to wonder how far Bella would go. Would she stop once she had everything, or was she simply getting started? And the answer to that question was simple. Bella had no intention of stopping. By now, Bella had seen it all. The ruthless world of business, the games people played to get ahead, the lies they told, the manipulation they used to control others. And she had learned how to play the game better than anyone else. But there was one thing Bella had always kept close to her chest. She didn't just want power. She wanted respect. She wanted people to fear her, but not because she was cruel. No, she wanted them to fear her because she was smarter, more strategic, and more relentless than anyone else in the room. She didn't need to be the loudest or the most obvious. She knew the quiet ones, the ones who said the least but meant the most, were the ones who held the most power. And Bella was quickly becoming that person, the one no one saw coming, the one who held all the cards and played them like a master. As Bella continued to rise, Ryan's fall was just as swift. His lavish lifestyle, fueled by the stolen $50,000, had quickly unraveled. The expensive trips, the flashy parties, the new girlfriend, all of it had come crashing down. Tiffany, the young woman Ryan had hoped would fill the void Bella left behind, had proven to be just as greedy and useless as Ryan had been. Ryan found himself drowning in debt, unable to pay the court-ordered fees, his reputation ruined, his future uncertain. Every poor decision he made only drove him deeper into the hole he had dug for himself, and as Bella's empire grew, so did her disdain for him. She had moved on, but Ryan was still stuck in the past, clinging to a life he could never have again. He had made the mistake of underestimating Bella, and now he was paying the price, but the true extent of Ryan's downfall didn't hit him until the day he saw Bella again. It wasn't at a board meeting or some charity event. No, this time it was in a much more humbling place, the lobby of her building. Ryan had been working as a delivery driver, his once polished suits replaced with a cheap, worn uniform. His car had been repossessed, his credit card debt swallowing him. Whole, and there he was, standing before her, a man who had once been so proud, now reduced to a shell of his former self. Bella watched him, her heart untouched by the sight. She had nothing to prove to him anymore. When Ryan tried to apologize, to claim that he had left her for her own good, Bella couldn't help but laugh. It was a cold, empty laugh. She had heard all his lies before, and she wasn't interested in hearing them again. Ryan's pleas were pitiful, but Bella didn't respond with anger. She didn't need to. She didn't have to lower herself to his level. Instead, she reached into her wallet and pulled out a $100 bill, placing it in his hand. "Use this to buy your mom's medicine," she said, her voice calm and composed. Ryan's hand shook as he clutched the bill, and for a brief moment, Bella saw something she hadn't expected: guilt. He looked at her, his eyes filled with shame, tears threatening to spill, but Bella didn't feel sorry for him. She wasn't trying to be kind. She was making him remember this moment, the moment when the person he had betrayed was the only one to offer him something of value. And as Ryan turned and walked away, Bella knew that he would carry the weight of this moment with him for the rest of his life. She watched him disappear into the night, and for the first time she felt at peace. The game was over, and she had won. The years that followed saw Bella's transformation into a full-fledged mogul, a woman whose name commanded respect and fear in equal measure. She had created a legacy that would outlive her, an empire built on her own blood, sweat, and tears. Ryan, on the other hand, remained a cautionary tale, a man whose greed, impatience, and cruelty had cost him everything. Bella had turned her pain into power, and now she was untouchable. But the most powerful thing Bella had gained was not the money or the control. It was the knowledge that she had the power to shape her own destiny. She had learned the truth about herself, about the world, and about what it truly meant to take control, and now nothing at all could stop her. The story of Bella Sterling isn't just a tale of revenge or triumph. It's a warning. A warning to anyone who thinks they can walk over the weak and get away with it. A warning to anyone who believes that power, wealth, or status can be used as tools to manipulate and control. The truth is, the ones who are truly in control are the ones who understand their own worth. They're the ones who know how to turn their pain into strength, their losses into victories. And Bella Sterling had learned that lesson the hard way. She didn't need Ryan. She didn't need anyone. She had everything she needed to rise above and to make sure that no one ever underestimated her again. So let this story be a reminder. The world is full of people who will try to take from you, who will try to break you, but only you have the power to decide what happens next. And if you're wise enough, you'll use that power to rise, just like Bella Sterling did. As Bella's empire expanded, so did her understanding of power and influence. She was no longer just a businesswoman, she was a force. People feared her not because of her wealth, but because she had mastered the delicate balance between fear and respect. She had learned the art of manipulation, but more importantly, she had learned to manipulate herself. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Every day, Bella would look in the mirror and see someone who had conquered their past, someone who had taken the worst life could throw at her and turned it into the building blocks of her future. The world may have written her off once, but now they watched her every move, waiting to see what she would do next. Bella had become a chess player in a world of amateurs, and every move she made was calculated. Every decision was part of a grander strategy. She had learned the most crucial lesson: nothing was ever truly out of her control. The darkness she had endured was the same darkness that shaped her. And now she was the one pulling the strings in every room she entered. But while Bella grew stronger, the truth of her past never fully left her. There were days, in the quiet of her office, late at night, when the weight of it all would crash down on her. The memory of Ryan's cold dismissal, the feeling of being discarded like an object when she needed him the most, it would hit her like a wave, threatening to knock her off balance. But Bella didn't let it. She couldn't afford to. She knew that the moment she allowed herself to be consumed by weakness, the world would swallow her whole. There was no room for pity in her new life. Instead, she channeled those feelings into something far more dangerous: ambition. It became her fuel. And every time Ryan's betrayal resurfaced in her mind, she used it to push herself further. She was no longer running away from the past. She was running toward her future. The pain had been the crucible, and now she was forged in fire. The woman she had been was long gone. In her place stood a warrior, ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. The media had already caught wind of Bella's meteoric rise. Articles about her new ventures were circulating, interviews were being booked, and she was quickly becoming one of the most influential women in business. But Bella knew the game was far from over. She had yet to achieve what she truly wanted. She wasn't just interested in money or status. Those were small victories compared to what she craved most: control. She wanted to reshape the world itself, to move the pieces on the grand chessboard so that no one could ever touch her again. It wasn't enough for her to simply succeed in business. She needed to carve a place for herself in history, a legacy that would be remembered for centuries to come. She was more than just the CEO of a corporation. She was a symbol of what happens when a person is pushed to the brink and refuses to break. And as Bella sat in her penthouse office overlooking the city, she knew that she was on the edge of something far greater than anything she had already accomplished. But with all the power Bella had gained, there were still people who would try to tear her down. Ryan wasn't the only one who had underestimated her. There were those who still saw her as a threat, a woman who had stepped into a man's world and somehow conquered it. The whispers began in boardrooms and high society circles among her competitors. They said she was ruthless, calculating, cold-hearted. They said she would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, and perhaps they were right, but Bella didn't care about their opinions. She knew exactly who she was, and she wasn't going to apologize for it. She had earned her place at the top, and she would defend it with everything she had. As she navigated the dangerous waters of corporate politics, Bella came to understand one fundamental truth. In the world she inhabited, there were no friends, only allies and enemies. Trust was a currency that had no value. The only thing that mattered was power, and Bella was prepared to take as much of it as she could. It wasn't long before Bella's new lifestyle began to attract attention from the most elite circles in the world. Invitations to galas, meetings with global leaders, partnerships with influential corporations, it all started to fall into place. But as she climbed higher, Bella couldn't help but notice the growing sense of isolation. The more powerful she became, the fewer people she could trust. She had no true friends anymore, just those who sought to gain from her success and those who feared her enough to stay in her orbit. In her quiet moments, Bella couldn't help but wonder, had the price of her ambition been too high? Had she sacrificed too much of herself in her quest for power? But those thoughts were fleeting. They didn't belong in her world. E had built her empire on strength, and strength meant never second-guessing yourself. The moment you question your power, the world sees your weakness. And Bella knew better than anyone that weakness had no place at the top. Ryan, meanwhile, was spiraling. His once bright future had been reduced to nothing more than a series of bad decisions, all leading him to a life of mediocrity and failure. His new girlfriend, Tiffany, had left him, his debts continued to mount, and his reputation was in tatters. He had once believed that walking away from Bella was the right decision, that by leaving her he could start fresh, live a life free from the burden of caring for her. But in the end, it was Ryan who had been the burden on himself, on his own future, and on the dreams he had once cherished. As Ryan watched Bella's empire grow, he couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. He had once been so certain of his decision, but now, in the wreckage of his own life, he saw just how much he had lost. Bella, on the other hand, had moved on. She had seen the writing on the wall long before Ryan had. He had been the mistake, not the victory. And now, as her influence spread across the globe, she had everything she had ever wanted. But more than that, she had something far more dangerous: control. It wasn't just about wealth anymore. It was about legacy, about power. Bella had transcended the realm of business. She had become a symbol, a force that others either worshipped or feared, and as she continued to climb higher, her enemies began to make their moves. They whispered behind her back, they conspired against her, they plotted her downfall. But Bella was always one step ahead. She knew the game better than anyone. She understood how people thought, how they acted, and more importantly, how to break them. She had learned from her experiences, from the pain, from the betrayal. Bella wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. And those who tried to stand in her way, they were nothing more than stepping stones. The final battle wasn't fought in boardrooms or legal battles. It was fought within Bella herself. She had been shaped by the darkness of her past, but now she had to decide who she would become. Would she let her power consume her, or would she use it to shape a future that was hers and hers alone? Bella knew the answer. She had already decided. She was no longer a victim. She was a queen, and no one would ever take her crown. The darkness had made her. And now she was the one who controlled it. As the years passed, Bella's name became synonymous with power, resilience, and strategy. She had outlasted her enemies, crushed the people who had tried to take her down, and built an empire that would last for generations. But what really set Bella apart was not her wealth, her control, or her reputation. It was her understanding of the world. She knew that the world wasn't fair. She knew that power wasn't given, it was taken. And Bella Sterling had taken everything that was hers, using the pain of her past to fuel her rise to the top, and as she stood at the pinnacle of her success, Bella knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning, because power, once tasted, could never be relinquished